welcome back to Hacker Hangouts on another Saturday morning, and I am thrilled that we are back. Between colds and videos at DEF CON, we're here and we're talking about video at DEF CON and what it was like shooting, some of the chaos behind the scenes, because we went in with an absolute plan, like a beautiful, beautiful plan, and that plan completely went out the door, like at least 4 seconds before we landed.
It was unbearable. Silk is impossible to work with.
I'm gonna keep muting out in between coughing, and it's it is hilarious because I feel like we had this weird dichotomy that happened last year where I would want to get caught up in the details. I would want to get caught up in like, oh, let's do a video, and then I have to like lay music and do editing and all of this, and Gowrie would be pushing me like, you're losing light. And then this year, I feel like I was the one going, we need to get more video. And Gowrie's like, why don't we actually like enjoy any part of this? So it was.
I mean, no, we definitely were pushing each other. This year was way more of a whirlwind than the prior year, because like the prior year we had time to sit down and think about a bunch of stuff, but that led to, we did 20 videos total throughout the weekend, and some of them were short and some of them were duplicates and things like that. This year we did 50,
51, 49, one
49?
short of 50.
Yeah,
also,
one short
Wi-Fi
of 50.
addict, welcome. Glad that you're here. Ooh, that text is going to be way too big.
So
yeah, we did 49
and
videos.
The thing I'll say to that is never again.
I would agree. I think 49 was too many, and maybe let's to add some structure to this. I think there was something I said early on, which I don't think I hit it as well this year as I wanted to, and we got better. I had this realization last year, which was looking back through the videos of thinking, here is this cool thing happening. Like, let me show you this cool thing happening. And it was a lot of, this is a cool thing. This is Scavenger Hunt. This is Blue Team Village. And there wasn't a lot of, let's go experience this thing together. And I think this year we hit 3 types of videos. Here's this thing happening. Here's this thing happening right now. And that was like the vending machine. That's one of my favorite videos where it was just like legitimately you stumbled on this vending machine for the XOR badge that someone's like jamming something up and ripping it down. And then there was like, here is some nonsense that we're going to just go off and do, like breaking into the knock. And I thought that was a fun one too.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I think we decided this year for next year or future years, assuming we do it again, because wow, that was a lot of work, was more Hacker Hangouts at DEF CON as opposed to Hacker Hangouts presents the things at DEF CON.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No, I mean, it actually makes perfect sense because we talked about this saying like, I think it's fun presenting and whatnot, but like what I'm actually there for, like what gets me off per se at DEF CON, like what gets me excited is the people, is hanging out with people, hearing what they're working on, hearing their personalities. Like some of my favorite videos was, here's this random badge that I created that's unique. And it was interacting with the people, and the whole here's presenting. I got it a little bit in the videos of talking to people about their passions, but I want more of that. I want more hearing about people's passions and less here's an event happening.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. And it's so crazy because even going back and watching the videos, we covered a lot of stuff. And the other content creators, they covered a lot of stuff. They got a lot of really good interviews. But something about it just didn't feel like DEF CON in the same way that we're used to experiencing. And that's one of the things that's really hard to come across in video, especially when you're putting people on the spot, is when you sit down to nerd out with people in these situations, it's like a 5-6 hour experience of like, I have no idea what I'm doing. This person also doesn't know what they're doing. They look like they know what they're doing. Let's all whack our heads together and figure out if we can become competent-ish, right? And it's an exploration in the sense of there's a respect between like the process of learning in doing it in the moment. You just can't you can't bring that across in video, right? Because what
I
what are we
mean,
gonna do? Make a 5 hour long stream where we're all sitting and reading an instruction manual? Like, it's not happening. This is the same thing we discuss about in a number of ways, where it's like hacking isn't all that interesting. I'm gonna just take a sip of coffee and then hit the brute force button and then uh, and then maybe
yeah, I
go
mean,
make some more coffee while I wait.
and that's it's the thing is hacking is not interesting. And I say obviously the act of hacking is interesting, but on video it's not. And I think that's what we've been figuring out is first year was like, can we actually do video at DEF CON? Like, is it possible? Because I think there's that whole like weird, not new guard, old guard, but this whole idea of like cameras at DEF CON. It's weird. And then this year was all about like let's see how much we can capture. And I think by next year, which I still want to do video next year, how do we capture actually like what it feels like, some of these discoveries without doing an 8 hour video of it. How do we? And I also want to do more just general nonsense because I thought the scav hunt video was freaking phenomenal in the sense of how just absolutely horrid it was.
Yeah, so like this is one of the things that were different from last year, right? We had a booth this year that was provided to us by Hacker Warehouse, and thank you to them, not an official sponsor, but they are great. Um, so they provided us a 10 by 10 space to have our stuff in, to set up a streaming area, to set up a place that we could actually have a physical drop and upload the videos from. And we learned the prior year that the hardest thing to do was to get things edited and to get things uploaded, in part because the connection can be unstable. The connection speeds are not the greatest, and especially at the forum, with it being so big and it being the first year, we still had issues with that, and that's to be expected whenever you go someplace new and you haven't learned the space yet. So this year, going through and having that home base, if you will, allowed us to make those quick drops of video and move on to the next thing very rapidly. And also the fact that you had an editor waiting for you.
Yeah, I think that was one thing there was two things that made us go way faster this year. One was having someone standing by on Discord. I could just say, here's the link to the video I uploaded unlisted, make a thumbnail. And they just go off and make a thumbnail. And then grab the raw footage, just upload it to Google Drive and say, hey, can you go edit this? And I'd get a text message saying, hey, it's ready for upload. I think there's definitely like wonky bits in that process because that was tossed together at the last second. Like I had an editor set up and then they dropped out. So I had to scramble to find another one and we weren't able to work out a process. But things like it's amazing that you can't, once you start moving and what you find what's working, you don't want to adjust it on the fly. But next year, like things like there's no reason for me to upload the videos. It should have been after I move them to Google Drive, the editor should have just uploaded them because they did a good job every single time without fail.
So similar in a sense from the prior year, you were constant. You had two cameras that you were lugging around. You were constantly changing the lenses and changing things about your cameras on the fly, and rapidly learned like, wow, I'm taking a lot of time to sit down and reset all of the settings every time I do this. And we had discussions about, do I bring multiple cameras, one for this, one for that, or do I just have the one that I use? And we landed on pretty much just use the one with the gimbal.
Yeah, and it worked out great. I think the saving grace on all of it was mics. Like one thing we've learned is like good audio. Like people can survive bad audio. Bad video. They can't survive bad audio. And those DJI wireless mics were phenomenal. I can't believe there was no interference or anything like that at DEF CON. Like, wow, that was awesome.
Those mics, those microphones, a little bit of audio nerd showing now. Those microphones are an engineering marvel to me. Every single time that we were concerned about the ambient noise, or is it going to come across? Is this person too quiet? Every single time that we had concerns, we went back and listened to the audio and it's perfect. And we were like, all right, this is pretty awesome. The only thing that was a little annoying was how sensitive they were when you were handling them. And so if we ever had to pass these things back and forth, that was a little annoying because you would hear the pops and the shuffling and things like that.
I think the thing that I completely just butchered with the editor was there's with those DJI microphones. It was kind of amazing because you could either you have two microphones, and you could either have, like, ideally what we ended up on is one microphone went to the left channel, one microphone went to the right channel,
Yeah.
and then when they went into the editing software, they'd pull them down, they split them over on top of each other, duplicate them to both audio channels, and then they could make manual adjustments. You would also mix them, and early on, I think for a couple videos they were mixed, and then one of the videos it was only one ear, and then they kind of got to the editor where they knew it. But the thing which was so funny to me, and I don't know why, it probably annoyed you to death with this, but I found it hilarious, was we were wearing masks, as a requirement for DEF CON and things like that, so I can talk, I can move my lips, and it wouldn't pick it up on the camera. And the mic is so close, Gowrie had headphones on. So he had headphones on, so he'd hear everything we were saying. So during when we weren't recording, I could say like stupid jokes to him, and there was like a couple jokes where I would just repeat and just say the punchline and see if I could make him crack behind the camera. And I have to say that was like the biggest guilty pleasure to me, that I could just see it, like, say something under my breath a foot from someone. They couldn't hear it and you could, and then you'd just be like, what? Like, come on.
What's really funny though is that the funniest thing is because I wore the headphones, I wore those cans all weekend so that I could hear and make sure that the audio was good and all of those things. I would forget that Silk couldn't hear me, so sometimes I would be talking back to him at the same levels to try and get him to do something, and then I would just in the middle of a shot be like, what are you doing? You're talking to yourself. He can't hear you, because I'm standing 6, 7, 8 feet away, and there's loud noise everywhere. So I have to imagine, like, next year, lesson learned, we need to get you a little earpiece so you can hear me.
Gosh, I
So
also
I can
think
whisper sweet nothings into your ear.
I think the other funny one was, because you'd be wearing them, you'd wear them in these little necklaces you'd wear around, you would forget they were on. So like one of the biggest risks, because they weren't ours, they were Garrett's at Hacker Warehouse. He let us borrow them, but people, like twice it actually happened where someone, I know maybe only once, where they walked off with it and you had to go chase them down. But I had to remember, I think I only did it one time, but I went to the bathroom and I still had it on, and you had the headset on, and halfway through using the bathroom, I realized it was on, and I'm like, I'm like, it's surrounded by porcelain tile and everything like that. There's no way he can hear me. I'm going about my business. I come out, did you hear all that? He's like, every word. So all the noises in my ear.
So let's get into this, because this is actually a good segue into the actual interesting part of video at DEF CON and things we learned this year. And there's a privacy aspect to this, because we were talking about this in the context of what's the difference between having a camera to take pictures and video. And part of it is the audio and the actual capturing of people saying stuff. And there is an inherent privacy danger there, because pretty much everything we did was non-scripted. And in many cases, the interviews, people were good sports about actually, taking interviews and doing things. And, the ground rules for us when we went in was anytime anyone ever said, I want you to delete that, it was no questions asked, we'll delete it or we'll reshoot it or whatever. So, we always checked in with people afterwards. Did you say anything that you're concerned about that we need to redo? If not, is there anything that you're concerned about in terms of private? All of those things. So ground rules. We never shot someone without their permission, and we did our best when we were in public areas. Although there were a few times that got better of it, we may have done an accidental sweep of the crowd or something like that. But we did our best to try and respect privacy in the sense of, like, we're not walking through like a camera crew that's like, hey, this is a public space and all of your faces are now on camera, right?
So I want to jump into a few things. One, you mentioned this. We went in there with like our hard and set rules. Like, we're going to delete things. No one asked us to delete anything ever. Yeah. No one was unsure of anything they said, because oftentimes you're talking to a camera. It's not live,
We had one situation where we didn't think about the framing when we were shooting one interview, And we
So
did capture people in the background, and there were people who are like, "Hey, if you're going to do that, could you please not have these people in the background?"
so
We were like trying to hit a
so
clear balance.
I'm gonna dig into a few things on that one. That one specifically, because again, the person it happened to, I love dearly. I really do. So this isn't like, but they got offended on behalf of a potential of something. No one said
Right.
anything. They were worried about the potential that someone could be upset. In this, like, it is like, it's a good discussion because there's two parts to this. One, you're in Vegas. So this is the dichotomy I want to talk about. You're in Vegas. There is legitimately cameras everywhere. Second, this year specifically, everyone was wearing masks. So, what privacy aspects, like if you didn't want your face to be seen, is this a reasonable? I'm not saying like public area and all of that. No one wants a camera in their face. I don't want a camera in my face where someone just shoves in the camera and I'm unexpectedly on camera. It's nerve wracking. It's not a great thing. So I'm not saying that, but like, what's the dichotomy there? You're in a public space, you're in Vegas, and you're wearing a mask.
So this is why we eventually came up with the rule, basically on the fly, that whenever we started doing filming in an area that was crowded, that people were around, yes, being able to take the reality of the situation. You're in Vegas, there's cameras everywhere, all of these things, sure, but whenever we started rolling, we started announcing, hey, we're about to roll. So anyone who doesn't want to be on camera, please exit. Right. And I think that's a good medium. But this is why I keep going back to when, like, what's really the difference between video camera and still shot camera. And the difference is really the microphones, because you can't tell when someone's shooting with a video camera how sensitive their microphones are. You don't know the reality of their equipment. They could have a shotgun mic that's shooting all the way across the room and picking up stuff across the room when you look like you're trying to, take an interview from, right there. Like that equipment exists. I've used it and it's very effective. And so that's the difference. And that's why I was saying it really comes down to the microphone and the privacy aspect of just accidentally walking into the bathroom with the microphone on. Yeah, I could hear everything. In this case, I could hear everything that you were doing. I couldn't hear anything else.
Yeah.
Like I said, those microphones were good at keeping it localized, and it was always pointing at his face. So every time he would mumble something under his breath, I'd hear everything, and it's just like, I wonder if he remembers that I can hear everything. So there is a privacy aspect there that I think has to be discussed. And when we talk about expanding video at DEF CON, it is an interesting experiment in the sense, and I'll say a dangerous experiment, because the first time you capture on video and audio somebody screwing up in a way that otherwise would just be let go because it's DEF CON and whatever, or they say something that maybe their employer would be unhappy about and it gets out whatever. The first time that happens at DEF CON with one of these invited content creators, if you will, it's going to be a big problem. And it will eventually happen. The more video comes into DEF CON, eventually somebody's going to get captured on video and on audio doing something, and it's going to come back to bite them.
And I think the rule, this is where you go with those general rules. And I think this is a couple things that we might do that I could see. One is, I think the general rule of not just like recording a crowd makes sense. But if you're also recording a crowd, it's not like you're seeing people working on stuff or talking. Yeah. There's no way you're going to record a crowd with like audio you're picking up. Anyway, that's kind of neat. I think making an announcement where, hey, we're recording, or even like wearing big yellow shirts or something like that. Like there is someone recording in this area. I think like the thing this is the big one. You have very good cameras on your phone. I could easily put this in my pocket, have it sit there. No one knows it's on. This should be forbidden and not allowed. Like this whole like pocket shirt, like, and there's videos on YouTube you can see of people doing that. I'm not a fan of that.
And at this conference, there was one media group that was ejected from the conference and banned for life. And I believe it was, if it wasn't Breitbart, it was like one of the other
There's two.
right-wing
CNN
rag.
was banned at one point. There was another the
Well, no,
Breitbart
at
or one of
this
those.
conference,
The
this
past
conference, it was some far right-wing wackos that were like, "No, I'm not filming," and they were clearly filming, and they got ejected because that type of that is a privacy violation in the sense of like you are now taking video and audio without explicitly without people's consent,
Mhm.
right? One of our base rules are when someone says they don't want to be on camera or to please delete that, we do that without questions
Mhm.
asked.
I
It's not like, is this a reasonable request? And it's not like a random person is going to come into the room and say, hey, I just watched you take an interview with somebody. I want you to delete that. I was like, no, whoever was on camera, if they want to delete it or they feel like they've been recorded, or if you even just feel like you may have accidentally been recorded in audio, if you came up to us and said, hey, I was having a conversation, I'm concerned about having it being caught on audio, we'd be like, cool, we'll do it again.
No.
It's fine. Right.
I'll actually caveat this with a couple things though too, because this year and last year, it's funny. You realize at DEF CON, me and you have never taken video of someone not wearing a mask?
Yeah.
Like, and here's the thing is I bring that up. It was funny. So we were on these meetings, like before DEF CON, talking to other people, talking to our leads, saying, hey, we want to do a video at DEF CON. And I would constantly ask the question, are we required to wear masks? And it's funny because the first time I asked it, they're like, oh gosh, it's another one of these guys. It's like, no. I just want to know because I want clean audio. But here's the big one is autofocus. Autofocus on the Sony cameras first detects the face and then focuses on the eye. They focus on the eye, which is really cool because if you have like a really wide aperture, you get like legitimately a half an inch of focus distance. So it detects the face, focuses on the eye. But here's the problem with a mask on, it doesn't detect the face, so it can't focus on the eye, which means what it focus on, whatever the background is, because that's the bigger chunk of the room. So like I have these great lenses, like this one I'm on right now. Everything's blurred. If there's a huge crowd in the background, I'm very much separated. This isn't like green screen or something I'm sitting behind. This is my room. I'm very much separated. I am so excited when the mask thing goes away at DEF CON. Nothing to do with COVID. Everything to do with that we could, in theory, record in a place where there's crowd behind us and you get the focus on me, just like it is now, everyone blurred, and then the concern is just the audio. It goes back to what you said. It's just the audio we're concerned about then, which I don't know why.
And
very excited about this.
So the biggest thing about this is we discussed the ethics, if you will, of shooting with the con in the background versus shooting with a blank, wall behind you. And we were like, well, what are we trying to do at DEF CON? We want to bring the experience of DEF CON and help people understand what DEF CON is to video, because that hasn't really been done other than the documentary. But the documentary was so long ago at this point, and DEF CON is so different that they've been talking about making a new one. And there's so many things that are missed, like the soda machine and the vending machine, and people, just making like long contraptions to steal stuff out of these things and physical security stuff that happen in a moment and then fly away and never happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We go back to the urinal cake badge because that was one of those things that like, I guess Gulo still has his in a sealed bag somewhere, but I sure as hell wasn't bringing that home. Right. It's a moment in time that happens that is super innocent, if you will, because that's what the con is there for. And then it just evaporates into the ether and it becomes one of those stories that people tell and never really tell quite the same way it happened. And the fish gets bigger every time and all those things. It becomes a good sea story, but it would be really nice to capture some of that stuff. So Sok and I had a lot of conversations about, well, if all we ever do is interviews where we don't ever show any, big open room at the conference and the people there, then it makes DEF CON look sterile. And like, it makes it look like that's not the way it is. And so we had a lot of these debates. and the autofocus was a real problem. You can see it in some of these shots where
So
the
frustrating.
autofocus would fail to, it would actually pick up on somebody's face in the background and focus on that as opposed to on Silk, and then it would bounce back and forth, and it was driving me nuts sometimes because we'd have to redo some shots. And yeah, so that's one of those things, like next year being able to have that focus kind of like Silk has now, where the background is super out of focus and you're able to see at least some movement but no faces. It's going to be a much easier time of being able to announce, hey, like, hey, we're going to film. Everything in the background is going to be blurred, but anyone who doesn't want to be in the shot, just be aware.
Mhm.
So, and the other thing that was kind of interesting is I was surprised by this. How many times we approached competitions and we asked teams that were competing, can we get some B-roll? We're the DEF CON media team. Can we get some B-roll of this? And the teams, instead of being like, well, we're competing and we don't want to give an advantage to somebody else, they were like, yeah, go ahead, whatever. And it
Yeah,
just felt like it was nice.
it's kind of funny. There was not a single time where we asked someone, "Do you want to do a video?" and they weren't immediately like, "Yes, yes." Actually, it was so almost like weirdly frustrating at times. It was like something cool would happen. You're like, "Oh gosh, I need video of this, and also this." And like some of my favorite ones were like, here's a perfect example. I had to laugh at this one. Was this 2 times at Scavenger Hunt? One, probably one of my favorite videos, which I edited after the con, was the scav hunt one, not the breaking in the knock, but the scav hunt one where it was people coming up all the time asking for, oh gosh, what is it, rayon, like we just started explaining it. But it happened at the beginning of that video. I love because the 2 guys came up and they were talking about rayon, and it was, and that one was like, I want to say staged, but the one which was not staged at all was the one woman who came on up during it, who
Yeah,
showed like the shrubbery and stuff like that, and it was awesome. But it wasn't
we
like,
had,
it wasn't arranged. Legitimately halfway through
yeah.
the video, she just came on in. It was awesome.
The best part about that, she said a bunch of things that we had to cut out of the video for her sake, because we were like, how do you feel about Scav Hunt this year? And she said, well, this year I blah 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 blah, and I haven't had to blah 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 blah. We're like, for the sake of your privacy, we're going to cut that portion out of that video.
Yeah.
Like we like we didn't we also have a rule that we don't editorialize things, but it's just one of those things, just like, this thing would be really embarrassing for that person if like their employer, what. So we were like,
Yeah.
we're gonna cut this part out for their sake, not like doing our best. We do our best to make sure that we're not I'm going out of focus there. I don't know why.
It's
Yeah, we do our best not to editorialize anything, because we've seen examples of those videos where like Gator gets taken out of context and they try and make him look like a criminal. And Gator's like the sweetest person I've ever met in my entire life. Wouldn't hurt a fly. And it's just like gets put into the super hacker criminal realm. And we're like, yeah, that's not DEF CON. We're not doing that.
look at yeah, Brandon says journalists rarely use autofocus when talking with people. Yeah, this also assumes you have like a professional cameraman who has done this his entire life, who can quickly change focus and things like that. Like,
Right.
this
And
is like a run and gun where neither of us have any idea what we're doing.
yeah, I'm what one would call a neophyte. The other thing, Wi-Fi Addict said, I think a 360-degree live stream in the Hangout or certain villages would be cool, just to see the ongoing. So we discussed this because we had our booth in the vendor area, and we, there were discussions. They were like, "Oh, turn the camera around so that we can see the crowds," and we were like, "Yeah, we're not going to do that, because that's a little." As much as I would love that, unless there were signs everywhere. Well, and this actually was super important. The People of Color Village, or what was it? Was it Blacks in Cyber Village? I think
Yeah,
is
Blacks
what
and
it was.
Saber, where
They did this.
Lorenzo White. I can actually say the name now. L's and R's. Stupid speeches.
So,
Go on.
so the Blacks in Cyber Village actually was streaming the entire time that it was open, and they had big signs up everywhere that said live video streaming going on. They captured all their talks. They always had Twitch streams. And I mean, they had multiple cameras going. So when you walked in, it was blatantly apparent that video was going on. So if we were going to do something like that, it would have to be a dedicated room, not in the vendor area. Because in the vendor area, it's a more general purpose area. We can't just like, you can't just say that, oh, we're always going to have video rolling in this giant room that people want to buy stuff in, right? That's uncouth. Now, if it was a dedicated hangout space and like the room that Scav Hunt had to store all of their stuff in, like if we had that room as the hangout room and we were able to put up signs like that, that would be great.
You're missing an opportunity here. A dedicated hacker hangout is what you're saying right now.
Of course.
Entire room dedicated just for hacker hangouts. I think that's
Screw
great.
Why not an entire con?
That is true.
Why even call it a con? We're just going to call it a hangout.
I think it should be. There's a whole nother discussion of whether or not, like, what is a conference. And for me, you talk to anyone at DEF CON. This was repeated in so many videos. And last year, heck, we did that. I think one of my favorite videos was like this 1 minute video or 2 minute video of like, what is your top tip? Just going around to Goon saying, how do you have fun at DEF CON? Every one of them was like, find 2 people you don't know. Find 1 person you don't know. Walk up to someone, talk to them. It is all about, there's not a single person, I think, who goes, you know what gets me off at DEF CON? The talks. I want to sit down and hear about the new TCP overflow, blah, blah, blah. No, it's the people and hanging out with people. And I think that's what we're going to capture at Con.
That's actually one of the things that is an interesting development with regards to DEF CON. Because I do think probably, and I can't say this for sure, but I do think in the early days, yes, the parties were always a thing. The nonsense was always a thing. But in the early days, with how small it was, there was a lot more people that were going to see as many of the talks as they possibly could. And with DEF CON becoming as big as it is, not every talk is going to be earth-shattering, amazingness that is going to change the entire industry. It needs to be more, a balance between, I need to be able to appeal to more people to get them involved in cybersecurity and having a sense of like, this isn't just for the Gucci hackers of the world to bring their 0 days. Yes, we need some of those and we should celebrate some of that, but we should also have some stuff that is more accessible. That's why like the biohacking village and their whole thing with their CTF was set up to be accessible by healthcare providers too, which is a totally non-computer technical group of people. And so how do you entice those people to come in? And you build a system where like, oh, me as a cybersecurity specialist, I understand the computer side of things, but I might not understand the biological reason why these devices are designed a particular way. And so their goal was to pair up providers with, the computer nerds, if you will, the medical nerds and the computer nerds, and get them together so that they could do a challenge together. And I thought that was really cool. And that actually does exactly what I say, where you have people coming in to figure out what's this whole security thing about, and being able to tell them, hey, you have a place in this realm. You have a purpose for needing to understand these things. And so DEF CON has this wide array now of talks and events and things like that you have. Well, we always like to point out DEF CON Darknet versus the CTF at DEF CON, right? DEF CON Darknet is the thing that literally everyone can do. And then the CTF at DEF CON is kind of like the Olympics of CTF, right? The whole gamut is there. And so how do you bring that across? How would you bring that across today in video versus 20 years ago is very different. I can imagine 20 years ago when it was much more attuned to an industry that didn't exist yet, you wouldn't want cameras.
Let me ask you this. If you were to make, we'll call it the perfect video, I feel like there was the greatest song in the world. Like, this is not the greatest song in the world. It's about the greatest song in the world.
It's a tribute. Come on, man.
It's a tribute. Oh, like, gosh.
You're going to butcher Tenacious D in front of me? It's like my favorite band.
I love Tenacious D. It's sick. brain fog. I don't know. We'll call it that. Not enough coffee. I can't make coffee on stream. If I could, I would. I'd have like a good either way. I had a weird comment on that. Going down a rabbit, someone actually said something about caffeine addiction is a real thing, and this was like the perfect internet comment on one of my videos. It was like, "Are you kidding me right now? Like, caffeine addiction is a real thing." You need a T-shirt and a bracelet for it. Either way, going on is what is the perfect video at DEF CON? Like, if you could encapsulate what DEF CON is in video, what type of videos would those be? Would they be interviews? Would they be like a knock of it, the knock breaking into the knock video? What are they?
All right. I'm going to toot my own horn here, but it would honestly be the urinal cake process of everything. Going around Vegas, trying to acquire one, acquiring them, figuring out how to get the components, using the back of a coffee cup to, do an arts and hacks, which, by the way, this year, the DEF CON Darknet badge was inspired by the urinal cake badge, because that's where Gulo and I were like, oh, arts and hacks, this is a great idea for a badge. And it just took 3 years to come to fruition. So yeah, there's a straight line between the urinal cake badge and this year's arts and hacks badge. But the perfect video would be that, being someone shows up at DEF CON with an idea of something they want to do. They figure, and it's ridiculous, hilarious, and actually has, the security aspects to it. And it's not just, crazy nonsense like cutting a hole in a wall, which is also things that happen in Vegas bedrooms. Anyway, well, that comes.
Hold on,
so
you
weird.
need to clarify that. A very
Yeah.
large hole for people to walk through.
Yeah.
Opening a door.
So, no, I mean,
Continue.
This is one of Gulo's stories. A hotel room wasn't big enough for the party, so they just attached 2 hotel rooms by cutting a door in the wall between the two, and then patched it up before they left. Right, that's a thing you can do apparently. Anyway, yeah. So, but the idea of like having somebody show up and executing a plan that they were coming up by on the fly that has, physical security aspects, you're forging a badge and winning, and then getting up on stage and being able to have a ridiculous, acceptance speech for no prize whatsoever is like a perfect video. And it comes across when we saw the videos that we had this year where we were like, yo, that ridiculous thing happening over there, the vending machines, let's go capture that and talk to these people, or the people sitting in the car just trying to hack the car, where you walk up and you go like, tell me what you guys are doing. And that video was perfect to me. We walked up to the people who were sitting in the car and we were saying, hey, these guys are, these folks are clearly trying to hack this car and trying to figure out what they can do with it. Let's get this on video and ask them if they're interested in an interview. We sat down and they said yes, and we started rolling, and we asked the guy who was sitting in the driver's seat what they were doing, and he goes, well, I have no idea what I'm doing, but these guys do. So let me tell you what they're doing. And I'm just like, dude, this is perfect. Like, you have a newcomer to the industry who has no idea what they're doing, but they're sitting in a car with other people, learning a little bit on the fly, figuring out, just getting some exposure to see that like a car is just a computer and you can do whatever you want with it. Like, that's the spirit of DEF CON. We're just like, I'm going to find some strangers and just try and hack this thing up. And I'm going to learn stuff on the way, with the whole gamut of people who know what they're doing to people who are just getting into the industry. That, to me, that video was like perfect.
I think the piece out of that I like the most when it comes to video, like if you ask me this question, is go on a journey with me, as goofy as that sounds. Go on a journey with me. I want to learn how to hack a car. Let's go on the journey to learn how to hack a car. And then you go on the journey, like you find this person who's trying it. They haven't done it before, so they're asking their friends, how are you going about it? You kind of drive it. Like, I think those ones are great. Using the urinal cake one as an example, like going on the journey with you, here's the biggest issue with that. You would have to dedicate almost your entire con to get the full story for one video.
Yep.
It's a million view video. Like, and I use the example of like Joe Grand and his which he had a video which went, gosh, for 5 million views, whatever it was. It was a ridiculous amount of views, and it was on this journey of how he saved someone like $10 million on a crypto wallet. Or he ripped it apart, he reverse engineered it, he found a weakness, firmware update, all that fun stuff. But that took him months to do. And I would use the example of this. If we want to do videos like that, it's going to take the entire con for one video, and it's then going to take a week or so of editing, and it won't get released until a week after con.
Yeah.
And you don't capture 50
this.
videos.
Yeah, and we've definitely discussed this, and this is the hard thing about we said it so many times over the course of the weekend that despite us having gone to DEF CON for well over a decade at this point, neither of us really realized how big DEF CON was.
Mm-hmm.
It's like DEF CON is huge. Every corner of the conference that you look at is an entire sub-conference. Like we have pretty much spent our entire time at DEF CON, at least in the past 5 years or so, in the contest area, and never really going outside of the contest area. And now we go into these other like villages, and we're like, wow, they have an entire gamut of talks that aren't even on the main talks. Like they're not even on the main 3 tracks that they have year after year. The main 3 tracks have talks going constantly. But then there's like 20 villages that all have separate tracks of talks as well. How do you realistically capture the entirety of what DEF CON is when you're going to spend an entire weekend making one video that tries to capture the spirit of DEF CON and that whole story?
I feel like the scene in Pirates of the Caribbean where he's talking about the Black Pearl. They're marooned on the beach. He's like, that's not what a ship is, but what a ship means. Or you say that's what a ship means, but what a ship is. Freedom. And I think that's going to be the hard part you're trying to capture at DEF CON. Is like what the conference is the culmination of the talks, the villages, these things. But what it actually is all the stories that kind of intermingle the thing in the background that no one hears about. And that's the sad part for me every year of doing video now twice in a year, where it's like you hear about the stories in the car hacking village, where like 15 people lift up a car and start walking the car out. I don't care about them 15 people moving the car. I want to hear about what led up to that moment. Like, that is not a small feat, organizing 15 people to lift up the car and then talk them up to say, we have to do this and distract the goons over there so we can lift it up. And then someone asks the question, you're like, are we going to get banned from the conference? Like, no, probably not. Just like, let's go lift it up and move it. I want to see the story.
You're making the assumption that someone asked that question. Very few people ask those questions.
That is a bold assumption, sir. Like, I that's the piece where it's hard. And I think we're getting to that point because you start getting this idea of, I need to know enough people at DEF CON, enough people wide span, enough leaders of all the contests that I have an inclination when these stories start brewing to run over there and start capturing the story with them.
And this actually brings up a good point. And so one of the things that we were worried about this year, because we have been going to the conference for a really long time, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to make sure that I do my best. My goal here is not to gatekeep. My goal here is to provide a safe environment for video to flourish at DEF CON, right? With new and old attendees, or older attendees, however you want to say, veteran attendees. Because I think bringing new people into that is a good thing. And we saw that with Allie this year. I think Allie brought a great energy to the conference in the content that she was making and the way she was engaging with the conference. But one of the things that worried us, because we had done video the prior year and we had learned a lot of the privacy problems and a lot of the reason why we have our ground rules in terms of deleting videos and things like that, is because we took it slow the first year to some extent to make sure we weren't doing anything bad. When all of a sudden you go from one small team to inviting a variety of people in to just go out and do with I'll say very little supervision and very little organization. And that's not really a knock on DEF CON. That's just how DEF CON gets made, right? Like the sausage making is way more chaotic than people think it is. But nothing went necessarily wrong this year. And I think that's a testament to, the people organizing it. But at the same time, there are concerns about that if all of a sudden you go from inviting 10 people in to do a handful of videos each to maybe inviting 30 people in to doing a handful of people, the risk is going to start growing that something really bad happens, where someone captures something on video, it goes online, and like they get fired over nonsense, right?
I think it's that I'm less concerned about. Like I would say not less concerned. I just think that's a less likely scenario that someone records something that they would get fired over. We're talking about 30,000 people. It is rare anyone does something so illegal that they're not aware of what's going on, where they get arrested or fired for it or things like that. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think that's 1%, 0.5%, 0.1%.
This is the thing, though, is that like we don't really know what's going on in every corner of DEF CON.
No, but I'll pull it to my point though. Is I think that for if I was the organizer of DEF CON, if I was Dark Tangent, I would not be worried about someone capturing someone doing something stupid. If they're doing something stupid that's going to get them fired, and like either way, that's a whole nother discussion. My worry is that I am going to lose the soul of DEF CON because I'm having someone with a phone walking around on a selfie stick, and I don't have one person doing that. I have hundreds of people doing that because now social media is huge. TikTok's huge. It's gone. It's here to stay. You have multiple people, and it goes to like, I've never been to the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but where you go there and there's like 15 people doing this number where they want to capture themselves holding it up. The experience is ruined because you go to see it and you see 100 people doing this. The experience is going to be ruined when you have 100 you walk anywhere and you have 100 people doing this, trying to get video of themselves. And and now you're going, I don't feel comfortable in my own space because now I go in there and there's hundreds of people.
So, and this is why the privacy aspect of how you bring video to DEF CON is so important to making sure that you don't have it itself cannibalize what DEF CON is, right? Someone said like, and I remember reading this on the subreddit, and to DT's credit, he responded and said, this is not what we're trying to do. They were like, it seems that we're doing video at DEF CON. Are we going to invite content creators in the social media sense to have influencers at DEF CON? We're going to have an influencers badge. That was the question. And DT was just like, that's not what we're trying to do. That's not what we're doing. It's just a different team. And, to his credit, I think he thinks about these things. And I think that's important. The important thing is that, and not trying to air too much of this stuff, is that if we're going from 7 people to 9 people to suddenly having maybe 30 people, there does need to be it does need to be much more organized because, like I said, when you're taking audio, a lot of this comes from context. Remember, it's not always people doing something stupid or doing something illegal. The context of things happening matters. And when something is taken out of context, and this is why we have our editorial rules where we do not editorialize things, when things are taken out of context, people can be subject to scrutiny when in context it would not have been anything, right? Like, imagine, and this is the example I use, imagine we walked up to the vending machine thing and we just captured that one guy trying to steal stuff out of a vending machine without the context of it being an actual event. Like that's an editorial choice that you can use to make someone look bad. And that's the worry that I have, is that when you invite 30 people in, you're going to have newcomers to the conference that do not necessarily understand the full context, and they're going to take things out of context. And this is one of the reasons why they have the media rules that they do at DEF CON.
And here's where it becomes like, you saw me like kind of cringe going, the problem, and I'm not even trying to kick the hornet's nest, but the problem is, if you are a content creator And it's one of those things. I don't put myself in this category because I'm not smart enough to be yet, probably. But like, your job is to solicit clicks. Your job is to put curiosity. So if I want to make that one feel more clickbaity, I have to be like, how to steal from a vending machine, and then zoom in on this guy doing it, put some ominous music, dun, 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 like zoom over and have like a cop like walk on by or so. I don't know, like what in Vegas it'd probably be interesting the type of cops you would get. Most of them wearing short, like over at Hack Fortress with the short shorts. Like, point being is you would do that ominous part of me actually thinks about this going, that would actually have been such a better edit of the video, is make it stupidly ominous and have like the short cop go by. But I think like you're inviting content creators smart content creators, not me, who know how to get a clickbaity title, and they do that by editorializing.
And so this is the thing that I think needs to be discussed in depth before you like massively expand this, and definitely ensuring that this team has ground rules in terms of how they operate, just on how they operate and get video, and how they operate in editorializing that video, because there is a danger in inviting these content creators in that they will editorialize something in a way that could very well ruin someone's life. The internet has ruined plenty of people's lives, like through no fault of their own. It has had the horde is the horde, right? And they will descend upon you. And like that's I grew up on the internet. I was born in it, molded by it, that it is a reality. And so, and that's why I say there is a distinct difference between photo and video at DEF CON, if only because you wouldn't download a vending machine.
I know, I'm laughing at that comment. You wouldn't download a vending. I feel like videos like that. Oh, go on.
The only thing I was gonna say is that the audio portion of this is huge, right? And how you capture audio, it needs to be ethical. It needs to be done in an ethical way, and the editing of that needs to be ethical.
The thing I was going to cut in with is, you wouldn't download a vending machine. This comment is legitimately, this is another great way to have shot this video. But the problem is, all of this requires time thinking about it, about the video, where it's like, this thing just happened. We walked up and shot it. But if we wanted to capture this, like we knew this was going to happen and we thought of it, that would be the funniest thing. Mock that entire video. You wouldn't download whatever it was, download or hack a car, steal a car, or whatever it was. You wouldn't download a vending machine, and then do like the pan over and all the shots.
The other part of this, and we discussed this, I just went on this tirade about not editorializing things. Silk and I had discussed about like, let's take all of the video that we had collected over this entire time and see if we can make, an actual, not DEF CON the documentary, but like an actual, like, here's DEF CON type video. And we were like, how do we do this without breaking that editorialization rule? Like, this is hard. And I think that's one of the things that I think professional documentary crews spend a lot of time thinking about and trying to get right. And I think we're not trying to be those people. We want to be part of DEF CON because we are part of DEF CON. That's one of our goals, is to take the thing that we love so much and share it with other people, but without ruining it in the process. But it's really hard.
I think I want to comment on a few things. One of them, Wi-Fi Addict, you brought up a point which is actually kind of an interesting one, which is just a Discord with a platform for people willing to live record their stories would be interesting. One, we have a Hacker Hangouts Discord. You're welcome to join it. The kicker is, some of those stories are so hard to find and people have to be aware of it. But like, one of my favorite stories this year wasn't a technical one. It was of a buddy of mine. His son was, me and him discussed this before con. He's like, what, my son, his son is like not professional in the sense of he gets paid, professional, but he's like a freaking amazing violinist, So like, I was like, why don't you, he's like, to the point, his violin is so expensive, he's not bringing it to DEF CON, like that level. So he bought like some cheapo violin, like some student violin, and started playing. And he busted. He bust at DEF CON. I don't know. Busted? Whatever it is. Bust. And it was hilarious. And there's this whole story that he did that. And then Vegas got upset because he wasn't like, they're like, you can't busk at DEF CON. And it's like, what? He's not really busking. He's playing violin and he's putting his thing out there. Like, he's not expecting. But then DEF CON came to his rescue in the sense of he had like this great sign, which was like to raise money for the OSCP. And then, Offensive Security came out and just gave him the course. Ninja Networks guy like hired him legitimately just to follow him along, playing his own theme music throughout this was such a cool thing that happened. And I was able to clip just the bit of it. But that story and the whole start to finish of it, I missed because I came in halfway through the story, and I don't know how you would capture a video of that because I missed half the story. I didn't hear about it till the end. So you'd almost have to like dramatize it, or you just do a story with me and the guy getting an interview, but it's not as interesting because you're not bringing them along the journey. So maybe that's the ones you have to get like B-roll for or something like that. But yeah, Discord would be awesome to do that.
So the sign off for this is going to be, what do we think? Mild ideas, because we'll probably have an entire stream where we discuss this in depth. Is like for next year, what do we think, and what have we talked about so far? Because people are like, wow, they're doing this stream like 4 months after, like 3 months after DEF CON. Where was this, or was it two months ago? Whatever it is. This is a bit, we've discussed it, but we needed to hibernate for a little while to like really think about this. One of them was it would be interesting in the sense of DEF CON has a DEF CON TV already. They record all of their main stage talks. They do all these things. The thing they don't have is the in between those talks thing. They don't do a live stream in the sense that they have someone who's there commentating on what's going on and having a discussion. I think it would be interesting, at least from my perspective, to have that booth type setup or a room setup where you have the Hacker Hangouts stream going, and anyone who wants to come in and bring stuff, this would take way more coordination ahead of time, where you're saying like, oh, someone who just did the talk. I said the talk before the talk series. We have someone come in and have a 10-minute talk where they discuss, maybe the story about how they got interested in these things, because they're going to do their talk. I don't want them to rehash their talk on stream. What I want them to do is to be personable and say like, how did you get into this? Why are you a hacker? Wait, hang out with us for a bit and discuss being a hacker with us, whatever that means to you. And then having field units that go out into all the villages and find all the fun nonsense and bring those videos back, have an editor that's rapidly putting it up, and then having those short bits kind of played throughout the conference in kind of a live TV broadcast type of way. I think that's a really cool idea. Now, that would probably take 100 people, but
yeah, it take a lot of people. I think,
yeah,
on my side, I feel like an idiot child when it comes to video. Like, I really do, because even after, so there's this whole idea is you need like do 100 videos, and then after you do 100 videos, you start gaining an awareness. Like, I think I'm above that at this point, and I still feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I have an idea of like how to get audio, I've gotten better at lighting myself. It looks fancy. But like the actual like storytelling of videos, and especially storytelling of the videos, is one thing when you're in a closed room in my basement, like scripting things out, where like I've never scripted any videos. I probably should do that. Point being is like at DEF CON, none of this is scripted. So I think like I'm still trying to hone the craft to be able to go like, what makes a good video? What makes a good DEF CON video? What makes a good DEF CON video that people will want to watch and captures the soul of DEF CON, we'll say, is like this mythical thing. And I'm barely just trying to figure out, like, I've gotten the editing, I've gotten the thumbnails figured out. Now I actually have to make good content. And I think that's where I'm just like, I'm not sure. There's two ways you can go about it. One, just like what you said, building it on out, building a team, building like more content creators to capture more. And I think it's a quantity thing. I think for me, I want to be able to make that one video which I can point at and go, that is the one I'm excited about and I can point at. And I need to find this balance between the two because I don't want to just go to DEF CON and find one video. I don't want to do 50 videos again because I feel like I missed so much of the conference and I didn't even get to hang out with people. Like, be it conferences confusing,
Well,
but
it's a different way to experience DEF CON, I'll say. Like, never in a million worlds would I, until we did this past year, I did not realize, and I said it, I was a broken record. I was like, dude, there's so much. It's so big, right? People, and the reason why I say this is because we had privilege. We were goons this year, right? So we had the ability to just be like, we're not waiting this line. We're just going to walk in, get our 10, 15-minute spot, and go to the next spot. And we spent an entire day in Flamingo going from one end of the hallway to the other end of the hallway. And we were like, how much more is there? There can't possibly be more. And it was just like every single time we get there, well, we're going to get in here. What are we capturing at this village? Well, there's 4 things we could capture. What's the most interesting thing we think that we could capture? And like we had to draw it down because we wanted to try and capture as much of the conference as possible. And what do we get out the other side? We get these 50 videos where I can go back and look and watch, and everything's interesting, well shot, good interviews. Good stuttering by Silk on trying to pronounce people's names. But you get some of the personable aspects and all those things, but it feels like a mile wide and an inch deep where, I think both of us, one of our favorite videos was the memorial room because we had no idea it was there. And we just popped in and we were like, oh, you guys organized this. Can we sit down and have a discussion about what the memorial room is for and how you came up with it? And that was like a nice, intimate interview that was largely ruined by the autofocus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's like the auto again, like, why do you want masks to go away? So I can have my videos in focus. What does that have to do? It's like, it has nothing. I just want autofocus. It's like one of those things I'm most excited about, as goofy as that sounds, is just autofocus. I have a nice camera. I want it to focus on my face made for radio. Right there. I would love, by the way, Wi-Fi Attic. Yeah. Yes, please. I would love to do a meetup at DEF CON 31. I feel like there was so much chaos that went in of leading up to DEF CON 31 or 30. I'm just pumped. I am pumped all the time. I missed GurCon this past week just because I'm back to, you talked about, we haven't been able to reminisce on DEF CON and talking about video. Back-to-back colds, house, all these things going on where I haven't been able to prioritize this like meetup. But DEF CON, anytime I think about it, the countdown is going. Like, I am pumped for DEF CON 31, and we're not even through December. Like, wow, it's awesome. Gowrie, with that, what are we doing next year? Are we doing video again next year? Just not 50?
It's too early to talk about that. Wake me up in January.
With that, I'm pumped. As always, I'm excited for DEF CON. Do you have any final words before we close this on up?
Lorenzo White.
I hate you so much right now. For anyone who doesn't know,
Silk feels so bad about that.
I've always struggled with L's and R's, and Lorenzo White is like the bane of my existence. We went into the Blacks in Cyber Village, and it's not on camera because it happened right before it. I butchered his name, and the guy probably was so confused, and I butchered his name like 15 times in a row. And the guy's probably, like, the poor guy had an amazing interview. But
he had a great interview, and Silk screwed up his name a few times, and then we had to stop we had to stop rolling, and we had to cut a few times so that Silk could sit there and say his name like 10 times to get it right. I had no context at the time that Silk had a mild impediment in saying literally this exact name. But it's the number of L's and R's, and there was no context. And I had to pull him aside later and be like, dude, how hard is it to say Lorenzo White? And then he told me all this. I was like, yeah, that's kind of funny, and two, this totally makes sense. So, like,
it's so awesome. With that, thanks for joining us on Hacker Hangouts on Saturday. This was a blast. Thank you for joining us on our like little retrospective on video at DEF CON. Thanks for watching and hack on.